Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review any artist's discography, songs, musical topics, whatever comes to mind. This episode, we're high, going to the 60s San Francisco scene, talking about not the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane. We're gonna do the Grateful Dead. They have more records, so we didn't do them. But no, we did Jefferson Airplane because I kind of like them. I don't know. I'll let the cat out of the bag. This was a catalog for me, kind of akin to something like I don't know, Beau Brummels or like I don't know, fucking like Psychedelic Furs, for example. Like I like this band fine, but they're nowhere near like an all timer for me. That being said, Psychedelic Furs are brought up. Zach's here. Um, yeah. How are you feeling about Jefferson Airplane going into this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people listen to Jefferson Airplane and don't necessarily they like them, but they kind of move on. So I think that's not unusual. For me, I checked them out in college, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised by what I heard and got pretty into them for a bit. But I didn't hear everything, and so I've gone back and heard the rest now, and we'll see where that all lands. But
Well,
yeah, you could say I like a lot of these, San Francisco bands. I like the Grateful Dead too, and that
yeah,
whole scene, Moby Grape, it's kind of my thing. So glad to be here.
makes sense. That being said, though, one of these records is fucking horseshit. Um, I would greatly hope that this is your least favorite album too. If it is not, we're gonna need to have a discussion because the worst record, without a shadow of a fucking doubt, is the self-titled Jefferson Airplane record from '87. I'll just let the cat out of the bag. This album sounds like shit. The song stuck. The performances are ass. I hate the guitar tone. The synth sounds horrible. There's absolutely nothing enjoyable on this record. Long John Silver sucks too, but I didn't need to hear the absolute bottom of the barrel, drab AOR bullshit from what used to be a kind of cool, interesting 60s band. This is a 1 star. This is dog shit. I hated it. Jefferson Airplane self titled. Should have just called it a Starship record.
All right, of course, I'm gonna start off on a weird note by not putting that on my bottom for whatever reason, even though I think I agree with
Why?
literally everything you said about it. Literally everything you said is correct, and I'm gonna very much relish talking about this album later because that is a truly hilarious album. But I am gonna go with Long John Silver at my bottom, um, and yeah, I hate this album. I really hate it. I think this album sounds like absolute crap, and I don't know what they were doing. Like, just the previous album sounded fine, and then this one just like I try to listen to it, it hurts my ears. Even when they're playing stuff that's like semi good, it's painful. I don't know what they did, but really bad. I don't know why they added Papa John Creech on fiddle. It doesn't fit with their sound at all, and he's all over this, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. I kind of like the title track. That's pretty much the only song I kind of liked. That still sounds like terrible. Yeah, I don't know have I much else to say. Eat Starch Mom is really, really, really bad if you make it there, but it's difficult to even get there. All these songs are like really, really repetitive and don't go anywhere. Really sad, just how far they fell. But I'm still gonna go 2 stars, just because I think performances are occasionally good, but that's about it.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's my next one, and it does suck. This album stinks. It's a boring ass rock record without an ounce of interesting songwriting, which I'll just touch on that now. I don't think even at their best they're like a great songwriting band. Like they're mostly about the jams and sort of the style to them. But like even at this point, you can tell they're even reaching like below the standards of what classic rock radio would ask for. Somehow all of the vocals sound like ass on this record, and bluntly, it makes you ask why they're even continuing. There's a reason most of the San Francisco scene at this point had either died off, either literally or figuratively, or weren't going on anymore. Um, it just is a prime example of a band without any direction. Pretty much all the talent was gone by this point. It sucks. Pretty much the only positive thing about it is they didn't touch a damn synthesizer. It's 2 stars. It stinks. It's just not very good. So Lunch on Silver is 2 stars. Yucky.
Yeah, they definitely. I think they really struggled to find any kind of '70s related sound, and you can tell. But I'm going to jump, a little bit here, and my number 7 is the self-titled from 1989. Yes, I'm not. This album is I can totally understand why this would be like a candidate for worst album of all time. It was actually like listening to this, I'm just like, whoa, like the songs here are just so cheesy and stupid, and the whole thing is just you got a song where they're like, oh, the summer of love, weren't those the days? You got that. You got the opening song is like, oh, we're called Jefferson Airplane. Let's write a song about planes. And then you got like two songs that are using like texts from these like socialisty writers and stuff and putting them to music, but it's like a very like cheesy 80s version of it. And the whole thing is just it kind of seems disingenuous. I could go on. There's one quote in the track, Now is the Time. The lyric is, too late for yesterday, too early for tomorrow. That means it's got to be now, you know. And then the last song is like, Save the Pandas. So this thing is just, it's all over the place with just them trying to like relive their glory days and just totally failing at it. But I don't know, it's entertaining. Like it's more entertaining to me than Long John Silver. I'd rather listen to it. It's occasionally catchy too. Like I think Planes is a decently catchy song. I think, True Love by Toto Writers or whatever is pretty catchy. Solidarity, even though it's stupid, it's just, the melody is there. Just the whole idea of it is just so over the top, and I enjoyed listening to it in the worst possible way, and I don't know what to do with it. So I have it at 2.5 stars, and I will just move on. But check this one out. It's something.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
It's very
Oh,
entertaining.
isn't entertaining? Because at least with like other records that I think are awful, like for example, Under Rats by Jethro Tull. That record fucking sucks, but I think it is so interesting what they're doing and how bad it is. The
Mm.
same thing can be said for like Think Visual by the Kinks. This
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
even,
not that kind of album. The music's not interesting. No.
yeah. So it's like that's the issue. And here's a couple more things. One, it wasn't yesterday. It wasn't tomorrow. It could have been never. It didn't have to exist. You could have just not. And secondarily, I talked a lot of shit on the Toto episode. I'm sorry. You at least knew to give away your bad material to bands like fucking Jefferson Airplane and things. So, okay, that's enough talking about that record fucking ever. But next up, this one might be kind of contentious, but I can't imagine you have it that much higher. I'm going with Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. It's fine. We're at the point where I think these records are decent. I'm at 3 stars now. The the bottom two are far and away the worst two records. It was very much birthed through the psychedelic scene of the 60s with Jefferson Airplane and like the Grateful Dead pretty much being the poster children for that. Slightly bluesy, jamming playing mixed with a bit of pop sensibilities. It's all right. The main thing holding this record back is the lack of Grace Slick, who is far and away the best member of the band. Her vocals pretty much are the reason people care about this band, let's be honest. So the vocals on here kind of weigh it down a lot of the time. As well, the songs are really just fine rather than anything really that unique or special. The best cuts being Let's Get Together, Run Around, Let Me In, and Blues from an Airplane. It's at 3 stars. It's a perfectly fine and enjoyable psych rock record, but you're really just better suited getting literally like a year later whenever they exponentially get better. So Jefferson Airplane takes off, 3 stars.
Well, I like some other members too, but Grace Slick is definitely one of the best parts of the band for me. That's for sure. Um, I'm not going to go to that one quite yet. Number 6 is Bark. So yeah, just real steep drop off, and I don't really know what it was. I know Marty Balin left, but at that point he wasn't doing as much of the songwriting anymore. He's a great singer though. Um, and then the drummer left, Spencer Dryden, but it's just something about him just kind of fell apart here, and you can kind of see where it happened. They had Papa John Creech. At least they have a couple songs here. They only put him on a few, and there's some that they actually kind of try to meet his style a little bit. The track I kind of like on here is Pretty As You Feel. It's kind of a relaxed jam they did with Santana, and the whole thing doesn't really feel like Jefferson Airplane, and that's kind of what I like about it. It's just this very relaxed kind of jam bandy tune, and it's okay. But when they kind of try to do Jefferson Airplane, you really feel them struggling to kind of move to the 70s. You've got a track like Feel So Good, which just feels like a boring classic rock song. And yeah, with Grace Slick's writing, you've got Crazy Miranda. It's like trying to get to what she used to be doing, her weird style, but not quite there. And then she does one where she's just singing in German, and I don't really know what's going on. And whatever it is, it's not that good. The opening track, When the Earth Moves Again, is a pretty decent one with Paul Cantor. He's kind of the other writer I like in this band, and he has a very kind of idealistic and style that felt very appropriate for the late '60s. And that song definitely has that a little bit, although it also has Papa John Creech's violin, which is confusing. So it's kind of back and forth here. There's definitely some real bad songs here, like Rock and Roll Island, um, the weird song Funk. I don't know what that was doing. So it's definitely not even hit or miss. It's more like okay and miss is how I would put it. But again, I think that they're good enough players and stuff. It's right on the border of 2.5 and 3 for me. I'm gonna go 2.5. I feel like it still isn't really doing anything for me yet that makes me actually want to go back to it. So there were a couple singles they released before it, and if those were on the album, I think I would maybe rise it, give it 3, but high 2.5 for Bark.
All right, that's fair. That's my next one. This and Takeoff are pretty close. They both have their issue and struggle to find like full good songs most of the time. The main difference here for me is Slick is here, which the best part about the band. The violin across the record is really lovely. I believe there was violin on here. Something sounded like violin. Could have been fiddle. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just work here.
yeah, I
And
don't
the thing
know.
that I actually really like about this album is they fuck it up on Long John Silver, but the guitar tone on this record is like so good for whatever reason. The guitar just sounds great. The playing is honestly pretty solid. It might be my favorite, just sort of like guitar sound that they ever had. It sucks. The material is boring as shit. It's just really generic by the numbers sort of rock and roll music, which if you like rock music, listen to fucking anyone else like Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin 3 came out this year. What are you doing? It's like, I don't know. The sound's meaty. It fills everything out nicely. I dig it. There is one legitimately great song on here, Being Pretty As You Feel. But past that, I mean, there's nothing else noteworthy about it. It's 3 stars. It's fine. It's rock music. Listen to, I don't know, fucking Uriah Heep or something. There are better bands around this time doing more interesting things that they're either too drugged out or they aren't drugged out enough to be making the interesting music that they used to. So it's like, I don't know, 3 stars. Who cares? Bark.
Yeah, that's fair on the guitar tone on that album. It's pretty great. I think that was kind of my reservation, but I'll stick at my 2.5. All right, number 5, Jefferson Airplane takes off. You know, first album. They don't have Grace Slick. They have Signe Tolley Anderson, and she sounds okay on the group harmonies, but she doesn't contribute any cool songs like Slick does. So, in fact, the song that she does sing lead on, Chauffeur Blues, is really not very good. My least favorite on the album. Yeah, this is kind of a 60s album, so the songs are kind of short. They're mostly about relationships. They feel a little bit more intelligent at points than some of their peers, but the songs don't really stand out a whole lot to me. But there's a lot of good energy, and their sound is pretty established, and that's one of my favorite parts about the band is the way they kind of do the harmonies and the heavier guitars and stuff. And you can kind of already tell that from this album. So I appreciate that, but yeah, I just have trouble. Like if you asked me what song do I feel like is a highlight, I don't know if any of these songs are particularly like that's the one. Um, but they're all pretty good, other than Chauffeur Blues, and it flows pretty well and it's pretty short. So 3.5 stars for me. I think it's pretty good for the time. And yeah, I think I was hoping for a little better going back to this one, but it still definitely shows their promise. Marty Balancing's lead on most of these tracks, and he has a great voice. So I like it, but I'm kind of ready for their other material when I hear this.
Alrighty. Here's the thing. Pretty big leap here. I'm at 4 stars, everything up for these next couple of records. I think that there is a very blatant classic period for Jefferson Airplane. They never really reached being like a great band for me, but they have a bunch of pretty solid records. So these could really be bounced around in any order, and I wouldn't really give a shit. But the first one I'm going to talk about is Crown of Creation. This is where my reviews get tricky. I kind of feel the exact same about basically all of them. They're well-made albums, well played, they're cool psych rock records, but unfortunately, there's rarely anything that truly draws me in to make them like a personal favorite record. For what it's worth, they're still pretty good. Main issue, as I mentioned before, boils down to songwriting. While the songs are good and they're well crafted, they're not really the most interesting compositionally or lyrically for me. I do love the production in this era. I think that they got this really cool, not really lo-fi, but sort of more out there, less sort of polished sound that makes them really cool. And Grace Slick sounds amazing. They just rarely write like a great song for me that like elevate them to a perfect band. What I said though, the vibes and the drugged out nature of it all gives it the 4 stars. It's really good. Crown creation, 4 stars and up for everything else. There we go.
Cool. Yeah, well, I might come to disagree with you later, but at least on this one, I agree. Number four, Crown of Creation. And yeah, so I have this one at 4 stars. And yeah, I just compared to the other three albums surrounding this one that I haven't talked about yet. I always struggled a little bit with this album. I think part of it's the track order. The second song on the album is called In Time, and it's this real slow, relaxed song. And it's just kind of a weird second song to have on the album. Most of the heavier and louder songs come on the second half, and it just kind of creates an awkward listening experience. But the songs themselves, there's plenty of good ones here. Um, I think Lather as an opener is kind of bizarre and quirky, which is, Grace Slick's style. She's really good at getting that kind of like um, eccentric quality to her songwriting, and that song is no exception. As well as Greasy Heart in the second half is also a great one. Um, Triad on the first side is written by David Crosby of the Byrds at the time, and he decided to give this song to Jefferson Airplane for Grace Slick to sing, and I think that was a pretty good move. I think she does a great job on this song, which is one of the early songs about polyamory, and very interesting to hear that in this time period. And you've got some of the rockers on side two, like If You Feel, is just a good chugging beat on that one. The house at Pooneal Corners is got that big apocalyptic sound that I loved about After Bathing at Baxter's, and it does a good job of ending the album. But there's definitely some clunkers in here, in my opinion. Share a Little Joke, I feel like just never really established itself in any kind of melody or song. Just kind of goes through, and I didn't really know what happened. And Ice Cream Phoenix kind of has the opposite problem, where it just, I don't really care what the song is that is there. So yeah, just because of the order and because of just some of the songs not being my favorite, this one just seems to be the weakest for me of the this kind of classic four run with their primary lineup. But I still like it. I still like some of the songs. So it's at 4 stars.
All right, fair. Um, Number three, like I said, I like pretty much all of these the same. It is what it is. This one just falls a little bit lower for me. I have Surrealist Pillow. The band starts to get a bit more interesting, a bit more adventurous within their playing. Songs are title, songs are tighter, the vocals are sharper, and the writing is more thought out. Really don't have much to add here. They're just a strong psych rock band. They have some fantastic songs. Some Idol Love and White Rabbit being the obvious standouts, but they're all quite good. 4 stars. I think this album almost struggles with being too short. This one's only like 28 minutes, which is really weird for them. Most of the records were pushing almost like 50. So I don't get why this one was so condensed in comparison to the rest of their work, but oh well, it's pretty good. I like it a lot. 4 stars, Surrealist Pillow.
Very interesting. I also have Surrealist Pillow at number three. Not a typical pick, but I'm personally going up to 4.5 stars for this one. I think it is a very big leap over their debut. Um, just some really, really great songs on this, including their two most popular songs, which were both sung by Grace Slick. You've got Somebody to Love, which has just a really cool vibe. I kind of thought that it might be overrated when I thought back on it, but listening to it again, like, no, this is a very chill song, and I like it a lot. Written by her brother, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of kind of songwriters on this album, including ones not even in the band, which is kind of fun for the whole like 1967 feel that it kind of gives. Listening to this, a lot of different collaborative approaches. You got My Best Friend by Skip Spence, who was their drummer on the debut. Moved on to Moby Grape, but they still play his song here, and it's a very cute and fun song. Um, White Rabbit, of course, is just brilliant. Grace Slick's first bout of songwriting and arguably her best. Inspired by Bolero or something like that. It has a big build in it, only less than 3 minutes, but still goes so many places and such bizarre lyrical imagery and great build. Truly a classic. But most of this album is dominated by Marty Balin, who I feel like has grown a lot, both as a singer and a songwriter since the debut, especially on a couple of his tracks on the first side, Today and Coming Back to Me. Both kind of beautiful, more hushed, folky songs that have a lot of depth and meaning to them, and I think are very strong. That said, just I think a few of these songs, especially on side two, are just not quite as memorable for me. They're fine. I don't think any song here is terrible, but I just think there's kind of a run starting with 3/5 of a Mile through Embryonic Journey on side two, where I'm just kind of like, the songs are good, but for a short album, I feel like I want a little bit more to get to that 5-star level of a punch for everything. And I also, for whatever reason, the opener, She Has Funny Cars, has always been a little bit of a mixed bag for me. So I still think it's great. I still think if you've got this at the top of your ranking, I totally get it. But for me, this is my number 3, just missing on that 5-star mark at 4.5 stars.
Interesting. I believe we're going to line up then, or at least I'm pretty sure we're gonna. Number 2 for me, I've got After Bathing at Baxter's. And most of what I said about Surrealist Pillow applies here as well. It's another evolution of the previous record. You have the more overt jamming, and the band's an even tighter unit on here. Grace Slick just sounds fantastic, as she often would. She's given a lot more of the focus across some of these songs. With its style, it's obviously less individually song focused and more based upon mood and vibe. And for me, the slightly drugged out psych rock works. It's nothing I adore, but it's a perfectly listenable record, and it's really enjoyable while it's on. Still at 4 stars. It's really good. After Bathing at Baxter, not much more to add.
Very briefly said, we are not going to quite line up. That I'm going to wait to talk about. My number 2 is Volunteers, and I'm up to 5 stars. I listened to this album again, and I think I keep bringing them down with time, but as soon as I hear them again, it's like I remember why I love this album so much. Opening track is just it's such an idealistic song. It really has that part where it's like, we're liars and thieves and young, and it's kind of stupid, but there's so much sincerity to it, and when you're actually listening to the song, it really kind of moves you. It's really beautiful. This was the time of Woodstock and everything, and you can really hear that on this album, that they're inspired by that energy, and trying to kind of be the voice of their generation a little bit. And even though we're far removed from that, I still feel like you can hear that sincerity in their music, and it really comes across here. Second track, Good Shepherd, is one of my absolute favorites from the group. They take a traditional Christian hymn and they put it to a very cool acid rock style, and it's just a really brilliant piece of work with great guitar and singing from Jorma Kaukonen. Not sure if I pronounced that right, but he's great on that track. Moving into The Farm, which is this kind of like countryfied thing, which is just a whole lot of fun. Hey Frederick is just a classic example of Grace Slick's writing. It kind of moves in bizarre ways and features kind of twists of phrase that you wouldn't expect. The jamming does go on at the end, but it's pretty good jamming, so I'll forgive it. On the second side, you've got Wooden Ships, which is also done by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And I probably prefer their version ultimately, but it's also really cool to hear Jefferson Airplane's version with the kind of sails rigging at the beginning. And you can definitely tell that the song is really in their style. It was co-written by Paul Cantor and Stephen Stills and David Crosby, so they kind of both contributed to it. Um, and I think it's just a great song about, you know, the possibility of there being a nuclear fallout and what life would be like after that, and reflecting on the philosophy of that all. Very cool. Eskimo Blue Day, arguably even cooler. Um, the sound is very like grunge rock, almost, having that 90s sound to it. Um, really a fast mover and burner. And Grace Slick sounds great on it, singing about trees, but making it sound very cool. Um, yeah, and then ending with Volunteers, which is a great vocal by Marty Balin. And yeah, the whole thing kind of coalesces to me into a really brilliant and um, inspiring piece of work that is also just a whole lot of fun to listen to. Yeah, just enjoyed going back to it, and it's 5 stars, and I still have one better.
All right, my number one, Volunteers. My review for After Bathing at Baxter's, but a little bit better. 4 stars, really good. That's it.
Is that your shortest review ever?
No, this one has a bit more of a pop tinge at points, which I think elevates it a bit. But I mean, I pretty much feel the exact same about all these albums. Like, as I was telling you before, I like the band fine in 67 to 69. The songs are solid, but I don't think that they're ever great. And I just think that they kind of have a solid vibe to them. And Grace Slick is a great performer. I mean, past that, I don't really feel that they ever really turn the dial in the way that other bands around their similar time do. They're just pretty good. And I think they made really good records around the time. But for example, I have the Album of the Year series that at the time of recording this was going to be going in the 60s. None of these albums really had a chance of breaking into my top five. And I'm not even that big on the 60s. So still really good. Still like it. It's 4 stars. It's just like they're not really a band that I love. That's just sort of how the cards fall sometimes. So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's tricky because I get what you're saying about innovation and everything like that. I think if any of the albums I think has that case the most, I would have to say is my number one, After Bathing at Baxter's, 5 stars. And going back to this, this is a real defining acid rock album for me. It's just it has that such an amazing sound to it. You know how I love all this shoegazy stuff that came later, and I feel like this was a step. Um, just opening up the whole album long really just keeps up a certain atmosphere, um, and it's just kind of addicting to me. And by the time I'm done with it, I'm just like, I don't know what else I'd want out of a rock album. It hits all the books for me. The interesting shift happening here is, Marty Balin was a big songwriting force on Surrealistic Pillow, and interestingly kind of turned aside here, only co-wrote one song. Instead, Paul Kantner kind of takes up the reins and, writes most of the songs here. And it's his style that kind of dominates, but he has that very specific kind of like apocalyptic heavy style that I think was kind of pushing rock forward at this period. Um, but Grace Slick's songs that are on this album are particularly noteworthy. She only got two, but they're just both spectacular. Rejoice is just amazing. It's this kind of like multi-part suite almost. And it's very whimsical and kind of countercultural. Um, the piano on it kind of interplays off of Jack Cassidy's bass, and his bass playing on it is just really, really cool. I don't even know there's any guitar on the track. Um, it just kind of it moves into different everything from kind of a more surrealist style to a more again like kind of alienated style, and it's just it hits you somewhere. I don't quite know what it's doing, but it's really cool. And Two Heads is also kind of in that same vein. Another really strong one from her. From Paul Kantner, my favorite is the closing track, Won't You Try, Saturday Afternoon. It has that kind of like teenage rebellion component to it. And I find the way that it builds very moving, and just it kind of embraces openness and trying new things and in a very different way. And I find it just really positive and really great to listen to. The whole first side, you got like tracks like The Last Wall of the Castle, which has the driving guitar of Kakkonen. The opening track, Ballad of You and Me and Puniel, goes between the louder and the softer section. So I have things to say about all these, but I'm sure you can take my word for it. I'm sure for some people, the very long spare change is kind of, a deal breaker. For me, I think it's pretty engaging for that. I wasn't exposed to like Dark Star by Grateful Dead at the time, and it gets into kind of that similar territory of that really spaced out jamming. And it's Calconen and Cassidy. I really think that they're both really underrated players and a huge part of the band's sound. And it's kind of a delight to hear them riffing off each other for even that long, and I'm kind of sucked in. So yeah, I think this is the most tonally consistent of their albums. I think it's the most kind of cohesive front to back, and it's ultimately my favorite. I think it's really cool, and yeah, I can't tell you exactly why, but for me, 5 stars.
Nice, nice. It's because they're all jamming, just having a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much what all these records are, though. They're sort of hanging around. Sometimes you have a good jam. Sometimes you're hanging out with fucking Toto, and that's just kind of what happens, you know? It's Luke. Damn Luke.
Yeah, I don't know about that 1989.
It's
That was
fucking
something.
awful.
I understand that point of view very, very much.
I can accept that. I can't accept it not being worse. Like, Long John Silver sucked, but
It's more interesting to me. It's worse. Yeah, maybe it's worse, but it's just Long John Silver is not interesting. It's just I don't want to listen to it. Jefferson Airplane self-titled is like interesting bad. That's my take. That's my only take. But
okay. I don't know. You feel what you may, although it is wrong. No issues there. This was a band. I don't feel that strongly about Jefferson Airplane, all things considered. They're not bad, but I mean they're just they sort of fall into kind of like the blend of, psychedelic rock in the 60s for me, which is never going to be like my favorite thing, so it is what it is.
I think a lot of people kind of tend towards the British artists from the period or something like that. And I don't know.
Mhm.
It's bands like Jefferson Airplane and the Doors have always been some of my favorites. And something about it, the connection to the bluesy rock sound or whatever, just kind of hits me. And yeah,
I'll say
it's hard to exactly say why, but they have been in and out of my top 100 for sure. Those top 3 albums. So, I could probably tell you now, I'd probably put After Bathing in at least in my top 100 at this point.
it's nice. At the very least, they have a better singer than the Doors, so it is what it is.
It's not true.
We'll do the Doors one of these days. I'm not opposed to it. I don't hate
I
them.
don't know. I don't know if I'll do that with you after this.
Well, you don't want to listen to Full Circle?
Oh, I listened to it. Oh, that was not fun.
Better than
Like
Bark?
that is truly a 1 star album if there was one.
Interesting. Interesting. That being said, though, this was Jefferson Airplane, one of the bands of all time. No, I'm kind of putting them down a bit, but they are very influential, and you could definitely tell how they influence later things. So nothing wrong
I
with
think
that.
they were able to communicate ideas well.
Mhm.
Their lyrics are they're filled with ideas that are still kind of being talked about and they were probably new and fresh for the time. I think I appreciate them.
Probably yes. That being said, though, Jefferson Airplane. Bye.